What really happened to Steven Seagal? Steven Seagal is a man of many talents who had acted with Michael Jai White, sang alongside the legendary B.B King, worked as a bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, and competed with countless popular fighters in martial arts. In the 1980 seconds and 90 seconds, he was very popular for his roles in action movies, leaving audiences spellbound with his calm yet lethal screen presence. With films like Above the Law, Hard to Kill, and the blockbuster Under Siege, Seagal was the perfect description of the quiet storm of Hollywood's action era. But the story of Seagal isn't just one of triumph, it's also one of shocking twists, controversy, and a fall from grace that nobody saw coming. Behind the aura of the unstoppable martial artist was a man surrounded by whispers about his temper, his treatment of women, his exaggerated claims of secret intelligence missions, his troubling political alliances, then the most serious of all the allegations that was fatal to his career. What started as a golden career soon began to fracture, and by the early 2000s, Seagal's name was no longer at the top of fame, but rather buried in low-budget films and tabloid scandals. Today, Seagal remains one of the most controversial figures in entertainment, a man once at the peak of his career and envied by many, now seen as a cautionary tale of fame, ego, and choices that changed everything. The real question is, what really happened to Steven Seagal? In this video, we dive into the details and reveal to you everything you've been missing out about this interesting figure. So grab a snack and watch till the end. Rewinding back to 1974, Seagal was far from the Hollywood lights. At that time, he was still perfecting his craft in martial arts, spending long hours in dojos, training not just to fight, but to master discipline and presence. Born in 1952 in Lansing, Michigan, Seagal had moved to Japan as a young man, where he immersed himself in Aikido, a martial art centered on defense and fluidity. He later went on to become the first foreigner to operate an Aikido dojo in Osaka, teaching students and gaining recognition for his commanding technique. By the late 1970 seconds, Seagal had returned to the United States, carrying with him both his mastery of martial arts and the ambition to bring it to a larger stage. By 1983, Seagal opened a dojo in Los Angeles, where he taught Aikido to a mix of students that included Hollywood elites, stuntmen, and curious actors. Word began to spread about this tall, mysterious American who had mastered an art most Americans had only seen in fragments. Seagal's dojo soon became a hub, and his reputation as a tough, no-nonsense martial artist grew. But Seagal wasn't satisfied with simply teaching. He wanted to bring the philosophy and sharp edge of Aikido to film, and that was exactly what he did. His chance came in 1987 when he was introduced to Hollywood talent agent Michael Ovitz, one of the most powerful men in the industry. Ovitz was so impressed by Seagal's aura and skills that he believed the martial artist could become a star. At that time, action heroes like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were dominating. Seagal, however, offered something different, a quiet, cold intensity. His style of combat, fast, efficient, and intense, was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Fast forward to 1988, the year Seagal exploded onto the scene. His debut film, Above the Law, directed by Andrew Davis, introduced him as Nico Toscani, a former CIA operative turned Chicago cop who fought corruption with his fists, his kicks, and a calm fury that was magnetic. The film was a surprise hit, grossing over $18 million on a modest budget, and it established Seagal as Hollywood's newest action star. In the following years, Seagal's career skyrocketed. Hard to Kill 1990, Marked for Death 1990, and Out for Justice 1991 all performed strongly at the box office. Each film reinforced Seagal's screen persona, a brooding, almost mythical figure who never needed to raise his voice to intimidate his enemies. By 1991, he had secured his place in the pantheon of action stars, standing shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Jean-Claude Van Damme. But his success was just starting. In his 1992 Under Siege, Seagal played Casey Ryback, a former Navy SEAL turned cook who single-handedly takes down terrorists who hijack a U.S. battleship. The film grossed over $156 million worldwide, making it his most successful film ever and one of the top action hits of the decade. Critics praised Seagal's calm intensity, and audiences loved the mix of suspense, hand-to-hand combat, and large-scale action. Suddenly, Seagal wasn't just another martial arts star, he was a household name. The success of Under Siege gave Seagal more power in Hollywood. By 1994, he directed his own film, On Deadly Ground, which allowed him to push not just his martial arts, but also his environmental views. The movie, though criticized for being heavy-handed, showed that Seagal was no longer just an actor for hire. He was shaping the narratives he wanted to tell. His fame during the early 1990s was unmatched. Seagal graced magazine covers, gave interviews about martial arts philosophy, and was even invited to perform with musicians like B.B King. By 1995, when he reprised his role in Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, the cracks in his career began to show. While the movie grossed a solid $105 million, critics noted that Seagal seemed to be playing the same character in every film. His mysterious, silent persona that had once been magnetic now felt repetitive to many. Nevertheless, his influence during this era cannot be overstated. From 1988 to 1995, Seagal released 7 consecutive films, most of which were financial successes. Seagal's rise during the late 1980s and early 1990s was nothing short of meteoric. In less than a decade, he went from running a dojo in Los Angeles to being one of Hollywood's most bankable action stars. But as the 1990s went on, the same qualities that had set him apart began to work against him. The mystery turned into arrogance in the eyes of his critics, and his dominance in Hollywood began to fade slowly with each new day. With that massive fame came whispers. Some co-stars described him as difficult to work with, too controlling, and unwilling to bend. However, those rumors were just the beginning. Before Seagal knew it, the real rumors that could make or break a star's career in the entertainment industry started to spread. Rumors that were impossible to ignore. And these rumors were huge. So huge that both him and his career began to tremble. It became so bad that he had to exit the US to settle in Russia. Now the question is, what were these rumors and how true were they? The first storm broke in 1997, just as Seagal was at the top of his game. News broke out that several women had accused him of inappropriate advances during casting sessions. These women claimed that upon arriving to audition, they were instead met with uncomfortable situations, with Seagal allegedly demanding private meetings that had little or nothing to do with scripts. Though the allegations never made it to court at the time, the stories began circulating in the industry, whispered in the hallways of casting agencies, and spilled into the press. By 1998, more women came forward. A number of lawsuits were filed alleging harassment and abuse, painting a picture of a star who had used his power recklessly. Tabloids feasted on the details, plastering Seagal's face across covers not for his latest film but for scandal. While some dismissed the allegations as opportunistic attempts to capitalize on his fame, the sheer number of women stepping forward made it impossible for Hollywood to ignore. Studios began to grow wary, and the offers that once flowed freely started to dry up one after the other. Every new day, Seagal battled with control measures to handle what was going on, and it kept draining and distracting him. As he hoped that the gist would die, little did he know that something bigger was on the way. Almost immediately, Seagal became the subject of another kind of rumor, one far stranger than the scandals of casting couches. Throughout the 1990s, he repeatedly hinted at having ties to the CIA, claiming insider knowledge of covert operations. Industry observers were left baffled. Some of his former colleagues noted how he would casually drop hints during interviews, speaking about operations he allegedly participated in during the 1970s and 1980s. While no evidence ever surfaced to support his claims, they became part of his public persona. News outlets began running stories, some mocking his exaggerations, others treating them with suspicion. The CIA rumors gained momentum when Seagal was reported to have consulted on certain government projects, though official confirmation was never given. For critics, these stories only added to the mystique he cultivated, a blend of martial arts master, movie star, and supposed secret operative. For skeptics, it was a sign of a man desperate to hold on to relevance as his movie career waned. The situation grew darker in the 2000s. In 2001, fresh allegations emerged when a lawsuit accused him of luring women under the pretense of film roles only to subject them to inappropriate situations. By now, the public was no longer as forgiving. The internet amplified every headline, and Seagal's reputation plummeted further. For every story of his cinematic heroics, there seemed to be a darker story surfacing about his personal life. As if that wasn't enough, the CIA claims returned to the spotlight in 2003 when Seagal suggested in interviews that the backlash against him in Hollywood was orchestrated by forces that wanted to silence him. He alluded to having inside knowledge about geopolitical issues, framing himself as a man punished for knowing too much. The claims were met with disbelief by most, but they created just enough intrigue to keep his name in circulation. By 2000, allegations resurfaced with greater intensity. A former assistant accused him of abuse and harassment, describing a toxic environment around the actor. Once again, Seagal denied the claims, but the damage was already done. His career, which had once been built on the strength of his stoic presence, was now overshadowed by scandal and mistrust. Television shows and late-night hosts routinely used his name as a punchline, signaling how far his image had fallen. The coming years brought a new wave of allegations. Several actresses came forward, alleging inappropriate encounters with Seagal during casting and production. This time, the climate had changed. Unlike the 1990 seconds, when allegations were often brushed aside, the world was now paying attention. News outlets covered every detail, with panel discussions debating not only Seagal's guilt or innocence, but also what his story revealed about Hollywood's darker side. The accusations painted him as part of a long-standing culture of exploitation, and his attempts to dismiss them failed to shift public opinion. Through it all, Seagal continued to speak cryptically about his alleged CIA ties. In interviews and appearances, he portrayed himself as a man wronged by powerful entities, suggesting that his fall from grace was orchestrated rather than self-inflicted. For some, this reinforced the idea of him as a shadowy figure with secrets. For others, it was simply a delusion, another desperate attempt to control the narrative as his credibility crumbled. The combination of actual allegations and CIA claims became a twisted duality that defined Seagal's later years in the public eye. On one hand, he was accused of exploiting women and abusing his power. On the other, he was presenting himself as a man targeted for knowing too much. A supposed insider of one of the world's most secretive organizations. Whether people believed him or not, the contradictions kept him in the headline. By the early 2000s, the scandals had overshadowed his talent, and his CIA claims had become a running joke in many circles. Yet, he remained defiant, continuing to make public appearances and occasionally releasing small projects. But more trouble still awaited him. In 2007, the Federal Bureau of Investigation publicly implicated him in a case that not only questioned his integrity, but also destroyed what little remained of his standing in Hollywood. The case began with an investigation into Anthony Pellicano, a notorious private investigator once celebrated in Los Angeles as the PI to the stars. Pellicano was infamous for using illegal tactics, wiretaps, threats, and intimidation to protect high-profile clients from bad publicity. During a sweeping FBI investigation into Pellicano's activities, Seagal's name surfaced in court documents. According to federal agents, Seagal had allegedly hired Pellicano to intimidate journalists who were preparing damaging stories about him, stories tied directly to assault allegations and his bizarre claims of CIA involvement. The news hit like a thunderclap. For years, Seagal had been dogged by allegations of harassment and misconduct, but to now be accused of trying to silence journalists using underhanded methods gave the scandals a darker, more sinister edge. The FBI maintained that it had enough evidence linking Seagal to Pellicano's intimidation schemes, though much of it was kept sealed as part of the larger criminal proceedings. Suddenly, Seagal wasn't just a fading movie star with bad press. He was being painted as a man willing to trample free speech to save his reputation. Seagal immediately went on the defensive. He issued public statements demanding a retraction and a full apology from the FBI, insisting he had never authorized or paid for any intimidation campaign. To him, it was an outrageous smear orchestrated to further bury his career. But the FBI held its ground. Officials stood by their claims, refusing to apologize, and stating that their investigation uncovered evidence tying Seagal to the intimidation of journalists who were investigating his past. The refusal to back down was devastating. It signaled to the world that federal authorities believed Seagal was guilty, even if no formal conviction followed. The fallout was immediate. Hollywood, already wary of Seagal because of his reputation, treated the FBI's allegations as the final nail in the coffin. Studio executives distanced themselves, unwilling to gamble on a star now associated with federal investigations, organized intimidation, and scandal. Projects that were rumored to be in development evaporated overnight. By late 2007, Seagal's name was virtually toxic in Hollywood circles. He had gone from headlining outstanding hits in the 1990 seconds to struggling for relevance in direct-to-DVD releases. And now, he was seen as a liability too risky to touch. Those accusations were deeper than just career damage. They struck at his self-image. And even he knew that his image was shattered. The FBI had painted him not as a hero or a mysterious operative, but as a man desperate enough to silence the truth through intimidation. Public opinion shifted sharply. Where once fans debated whether the CIA rumors might hold some truth, or whether the harassment allegations were exaggerated, the Pellicano case left little room for doubt. People began to see Seagal as a man who would do anything, legal or not, to protect himself. Even longtime admirers struggled to reconcile the actor they loved with the accusations of criminal behavior. News outlets covered the story extensively, framing it as the dramatic collapse of a once promising star. Tabloids relished every detail, portraying Seagal as another example of Hollywood hubris undone by arrogance and scandal. The FBI case was particularly damaging because it brought together all the threads of Seagal's controversies into one explosive narrative. The assault allegations, which had lingered since the early 1990s, were now tied directly to a federal case about intimidation. His CIA claims, long ridiculed by skeptics, were suddenly being reported alongside stories of shadowy schemes. Instead of being remembered for his breakout roles or his martial arts mastery, Seagal was now indelibly linked to federal investigations, harassment lawsuits, and tarnished credibility. Seagal tried to fight back in the court of public opinion. He gave interviews insisting that he was innocent, that the FBI had unfairly targeted him, and that he had become collateral damage in their larger pursuit of Pelicana. He painted himself as a victim of Hollywood politics and federal overreach, but his words carried little weight. By this point, the damage was done. Hollywood had moved on, and so had much of the public. What made the situation even more devastating was the FBI's refusal to make an apology to him. Federal agents simply refused, claiming their evidence spoke for itself. The FBI is not an agency known for casual accusations. If they had implicated Seagal, many reasoned there must have been a reason. Even without a public trial or conviction, the association was damning enough to end his credibility. By the late 2000s, Seagal's career was effectively over. The films that followed were low budget, poorly received, and often released directly to DVD. His brief attempt at reinvention with the reality TV series Steven Seagal, Lawman in 2009 was seen by many as a desperate grab for relevance rather than a serious career move. The aura of mystery and danger that once defined his screen persona had evaporated, replaced by an unshakable reputation for scandal and disgrace. That year, Seagal confessed that out of all the scandals he had to deal with, the FBI scandal was the turning point, the moment when his career collapsed beyond repair. It wasn't just another tabloid rumor or a failed movie. It was federal authorities publicly tying his name to intimidation, harassment, and scandal, and then standing by their accusations. In Hollywood, where perception is everything, that was enough to ensure no studio would risk associating with him again. And just like that, Seagal, once embodied invincibility on screen, got ruined under the weight of scandal, compounded by the FBI's refusal to let him rewrite the story. What really happened to Steven Seagal in 2007 was more than a controversy. It was a fall from grace so complete that it turned a once-beloved action star into a symbol of Hollywood's darkest truths. The man who once embodied the cold, untouchable hero of the action genre was now defined by controversy, mystery, and scandal. Let's know your thoughts in the comments section. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, like and share.